I want you to picture a scenario.
Okay.
It's a crisis meeting, maybe sales are down, or a product launch just completely
Oh,
imploded.
yeah. The classic panic room scenario.
Exactly. The room is incredibly loud. People are throwing out these half-baked ideas, interrupting each other, uh, maybe even trying to shift the blame a little bit.
High adrenaline, zero logic.
Right. It's just chaotic energy. You know the vibe. Everyone is trying to be the hero who solves it in 5 minutes, but
There's always one person who isn't.
yes, there's one person in the corner. They haven't said a single word for like 45 minutes, and they aren't scrolling on their phone. They're just watching, listening.
Taking it all in.
And honestly, it's making the loud people a little nervous. But then, just as the meeting is about to break up with absolutely zero resolution, this person clears their throat. They ask one question. Just one.
And the whole room just freezes.
Because that one question
Yeah.
completely exposes the root cause that everyone else was just too busy shouting to notice.
That is the ultimate aha moment. It's coming from the back of the room. It's like a sniper approach to problem solving.
It really is.
Yeah.
And today, we aren't just talking about, introverts or shy people. We are going a lot deeper into that specific archetype. We're analyzing a very specific personality architecture from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report.
One of my absolute favorite systems.
Same here. We're looking at the profile technically known as the WSFU, but it's much more evocatively called the Quiet Curiosity Diver.
The diver.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a great profile to unpack because it's so completely counterintuitive to how modern business usually operates.
Because we worship speed.
Exactly. We live in a world of move fast and break things, but the WSFU is the total antithesis of that. They offer this masterclass in what the ME80 system calls sustained submersion.
Sustained submersion. It sounds like a submarine warfare or something. But before we deploy the periscope, let's back up just slightly. For the listeners who are maybe new to our deep dives into the Max Energy ME80 system, can you give us the quick primer? Like, why are we talking about energy instead of just standard personality traits?
Right. So most personality tests you take online, they describe your behavior, what you do. Like you talk a lot or you like schedules.
Right, the surface stuff.
Yeah, the surface. But the Max Energy ME80 system is different because it looks at your energy. Think of it like a computer. Other tests describe the case. Is it a laptop? A desktop? ME80 looks at the motherboard.
It maps the circuitry.
Exactly. It maps the internal circuitry, how you absorb information, how you verify what's true, and how you actually calculate your emotional release. It explains the why behind the what.
It's the wiring diagram.
Yeah.
And today, we're looking at the wiring diagram for the Quiet Curiosity Diver. The report actually leads with a very specific identity profile. It says, dives beneath the visible, discovering depth through quiet exploration.
The key word in that whole sentence is visible.
Explain that.
Yeah.
Because usually we think visible is good, right? We want transparency.
Okay, imagine you and I are standing on a beach. We're looking at the ocean. We see the waves, the white caps, maybe some debris floating on top. That is the visible layer of reality.
Okay.
In a meeting, that's the small talk. The immediate complaints, the surface level data. Most people, let's call them snorkelers, they stay right there. They just react to the waves.
But the diver isn't interested in the waves.
Not at all. The WSFU puts on weighted boots. They intentionally sink past the noise, past those surface currents, all the way down to the bedrock. Their entire psychological makeup is designed to completely ignore the flash and focus on the foundation.
The report calls this an inward inquiry personality. But here's the thing. In a corporate setting, or even just at a dinner party, doesn't that just look like they're checked out?
It often does, and that is the tragedy of it. Because they aren't actively competing for airtime, people assume they just have nothing to say.
But internally,
They are running this incredibly complex process. It's a control mechanism called time sedimentation.
time sedimentation. I love that term, but I mean, it sounds slow.
It is slow, by design. Think about a glass of really muddy water. If you shake it, it's opaque. You can't see anything through it. The diver believes that you absolutely cannot understand the truth while the water is moving. You have to put the glass down and wait.
Wait for the mud to settle.
Exactly. You let the sediment fall to the bottom so the water becomes clear. Only then can you actually see what is in the glass. The WSFU just flat out refuses to make a judgment while the water is still swirling.
So when everyone else is shouting, what do we do? What do we do? The diver is just thinking, the water is too muddy. I'm waiting.
Yes. They use time as a tool. They aren't stalling. They're allowing the appearance of the problem to fade so the actual structure reveals itself. Their superpower isn't speed, it's depth. They rely on this repeated comparison over time to let the understanding naturally form.
That is such a fascinating way to frame silence. It's not an absence of activity, it's a specific processing technique. But let's get technical. I want to open up the hood and look at the energy matrix that the ME80 report details. We have these 4 layers: IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation. This is the engine, right?
Right. So the overarching theme for the diver is carrying absorption. That means their primary energy setting is input. They are built to take things in.
Right.
Expression pushing energy out is only an auxiliary function for them. They are high-capacity sponges, not fire hoses.
Okay, let's start at the bottom layer, the foundation, the IP layer or inner value layer. This is what drives their core beliefs. For the WSFU, this is driven by something called risk perception activation. It kind of makes them sound anxious. Are they just worriers?
It's really easy to mistake it for anxiety, but it's actually vigilance. Imagine you're a structural engineer walking into a building. Most people look at the paint or the nice furniture. The engineer looks at the load-bearing beams. They are scanning for cracks.
So their value system is based on safety.
It's based on integrity, structural integrity. When a diver walks into a new project or meets a new person, their internal radar pings. They ask, what here doesn't fit? Where is the contradiction? Where is the risk?
They don't start with, this is great.
No, they start with, is this solid?
That skepticism must be exhausting, but also incredibly valuable. Okay, moving up, we have the IQ layer, the emotional activation layer. How do they process their thoughts and callings?
This is one of the most distinctive parts of the profile. It's called experience and verification judgment.
Verification. So they need proof.
They need receipts, yes. But more specifically, they cross-reference new information against their own internal library. The report says they have to prove it internally before they can actually feel the emotion of it.
Wait, so they can't even get excited about an idea until they've logically verified it?
Pretty much. If a super charismatic leader comes in and says, we're going to double our revenue in 6 months, the diver does not feel excitement. They feel friction.
Friction.
Yeah. They immediately go to their mental archive. Have I seen this work before? Does the data support this? No. Then I don't trust it.
So logic is literally the gatekeeper for their emotion.
Precisely. You cannot bypass the gatekeeper with charm. You have to bring the data.
Okay, that explains a lot about some former bosses of mine.
Huh.
Let's go to the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer. This is how they decide to act or speak. The report calls this emotional expression and release. Now, release sounds spontaneous, like letting off steam.
But look at the word right before it, calculation. This is the paradox. Even their outbursts are calculated.
How can an outburst be calculated? That sounds like acting.
It's not acting, it's regulation. Have you ever seen someone who is clearly angry, but they are sitting perfectly still, choosing exactly the right moment to say the one thing that cuts the absolute deepest?
Oh man, yes. It's terrifying.
That's calculated release. The diver feels the emotion. Maybe they are furious, but the EQ layer steps in and says, hold on, is it safe to show this? Is it useful? What is the impact? They regulate the valve. They don't just let the dam break. They open the sluice gate exactly 10% to let the pressure out.
So even their emotional expression is a strategic decision.
Yes. Which brings us to the final layer, the manifestation layer. What does the world actually see?
The report says the energy operates inward.
Right. To the outside world, they look contained. Gravity pulls everything toward them. They aren't projecting energy onto the team. They are pulling the team's energy in, analyzing it, holding it, and integrating it.
It really is a deep dive system. It's all internal. Which segues perfectly into the Jeep trait analysis. We've talked about the mechanics, but let's talk about the superpower. The report calls this sustained submersion.
This is where the diver earns their paycheck.
The report uses a very specific phrase. Pause, then process. In a crisis, this seems like it would be a massive superpower.
Oh, it is. Let's go back to that chaotic meeting we started with. When a crisis hits, most people go into a fight or flight response. Their brains get hijacked by the noise. They react to the appearance of the problem. The client yelling, the server crashing.
They're just putting out fires.
They're swatting at smoke.
Yeah.
But the WSFU remains composed. Because they have that risk perception and verification logic, they don't react to the noise. They focus on the thread.
The thread.
The causal thread. The sequence of events. While everyone is freaking out, the diver is performing multiple cross-reference comparisons in their head.
Right.
They're thinking, okay, the server crashed. People are saying it's a hack. But 3 months ago, we skipped the update on the load balancer, And yesterday, traffic spiked by 40%. This isn't a hack, it's a capacity issue.
They're connecting dots that span across time.
Exactly. They aren't just looking at right now, they're looking at the timeline. And because their understanding comes from this prolonged observation, when they finally do speak, their judgment has what the report calls high penetration.
Penetration, that's a strong word.
It means it cuts through the nonsense. A snap decision just bounces off the surface. A sedimented decision penetrates all the way to the core.
However, and there's always a however in these reports, we have to talk about the shadow side, the blind spot. The report identifies a major vulnerability called delayed expression.
Yeah. This is the Achilles heel.
The core philosophy here is keep thoughts in heart, which sounds very poetic and zen, but practically speaking, in a fast-moving business, is this where they get into trouble?
Big trouble. The problem is the lag time. Because they have this rigorous requirement to verify and cross-reference and calculate release, their processing speed often lags behind the environment.
The world just moves faster than their verification process.
Exactly. They might have the perfect solution to save the company $1 million, but they're still 95% sure, not 100% sure. So they hold it.
Oh, no.
They wait for one more piece of data to let the mud settle. And by the time they are ready to speak,
The CEO has already signed the contract with the bad vendor.
the ship has sailed. They miss the optimal feedback timing. And this is frustrating for absolutely everyone. The team is frustrated because they didn't get the warning. And the diver is frustrated because they knew the answer, but didn't get it out in time.
And the report mentions this creates an internal problem too, right? Something called stacking uncertainty.
This is the real psychological toll. If a diver spends too much time in independent thinking without checking in with others, what we call external alignment, they can get stuck in a loop.
How does that happen?
Well, they verify fact A, which leads to doubt B, which requires checking fact C. They just stack layers of complexity inside their own head.
Analysis paralysis.
It's actually worse than paralysis. It's a pressure cooker. They are building up all this pressure of unresolved complexity inside. They need to learn to release the pressure valve earlier, even if they aren't fully certain yet.
That is such a critical, actionable tip for any WSFUs listening. You don't need absolute certainty. Sometimes 80% is enough to save the day.
Absolutely.
Let's pivot to social dynamics.
Yep.
Section 5 covers social relationships. How does this deep-diving computer operate at a cocktail party?
We call this the quiet sensitivity, and it's a classic case of perception versus reality.
Externally, they are the invisible observer, right?
Yes. The wallflower. You see them standing at the edge of the room, holding a drink, maybe checking their watch. People think, oh, they're aloof, or they're bored, or they're just slow and don't get the joke.
But internally,
They are recording everything in 4K resolution. They are sensing the emotional flow and the subtext of the room with extreme profundity.
extreme profundity, that's high praise.
It is. Because they aren't talking, all their energy is going into sensing. They notice that Bob flinched when Sarah mentioned the budget. They notice that the host is smiling, but their eyes are completely stressed out. They see the webs of tension that the loud people are entirely missing.
See much, speak little.
Exactly. They don't actively penetrate the social circle. They aren't leading the conga line. But they are the ones who understand exactly why the conga line started and who is secretly hating it.
I feel like I need to apologize to some friends. I've definitely mistaken that observational silence for disinterest.
It's rarely disinterest. It's usually deep processing.
Okay, let's bring this back to the workplace. If I'm a manager or if I'm building a team, why do I need a WSFU? The report calls them the team's deep sea radar.
This is the business case right here. If you have a team full of high-expression people, the fast movers, the loud talkers, you have a Ferrari with no brakes. You are going to go very fast, and you are going to hit a wall.
The diver is the braking system.
They are the radar that sees the wall 5 miles away. They spot budding risks, problems that are just tiny seeds right now, before they become unfixable disasters.
There's a term in the report I absolutely love. They reduce blind push costs.
It's a brilliant economic concept. What is the cost of blind pushing? It's the cost of recalling a product because you missed a safety flaw. It's the cost of a lawsuit you didn't see coming. It's the cost of redoing a project 3 times because you didn't plan it right the first time.
So the diver is an insurance policy.
Exactly. Their judgments undergo that strict logical organization we talked about. So when you include them in the decision-making process, you elevate the decision accuracy of the entire group. You trade a little bit of speed for a massive increase in accuracy.
So where do they thrive? What are the recommended fields where time sedimentation is an asset, not a liability?
The report highlights 4 main areas. First, strategy planning. This requires deep industry research and taking a long-term view. You can't just snap your fingers and do strategy. You need that sedimentation.
Makes sense? You need to look at the history to predict the future.
Second is quality monitoring. Think risk management, compliance, safety protocols. You want a diver checking the O-rings on the space shuttle. You want someone who is scanning for the one thing that doesn't fit.
Absolutely. I do not want a visionary checking the brakes. I want a skeptic.
Precisely. Third is data insight, organizing massive amounts of data and recognizing complex patterns over time. And finally, professional inquiry. Academic researchers, forensic accountants, detectives, any role where getting it right is way more important than getting it done by 5 p.m.
It seems like any role where deep focus and accuracy are paramount is a win for them. It's clear that this profile is indispensable, yet often undervalued because their work is invisible until it saves you.
Well said.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to revisit the closing sentiment of the report, the golden quote. It says, "The quiet curiosity diver's value often surfaces in silence. While others busy with appearance, they have already submerged, guarding that unseen yet critical truth."
It's a beautiful reminder. In a noisy world, we tend to think silence is empty, but for the WSFU, silence is where the work happens. It's where the answers actually are.
So here is my challenge for you, the listener. If you are a manager working with a quiet curiosity diver, are you forcing them to swim too fast? Are you demanding an instant answer when they are trying to let the mud settle? You might be robbing yourself of the best insight in the room.
And if you are the diver, are you holding your breath too long? Are you waiting for that perfect 100% certainty while the opportunity just drifts away? Remember, your 80% certainty is probably better than everyone else's 100%.
Trust your radar, but don't be afraid to broadcast the signal a little earlier.
Respect the depth, but mind the timing.
If you want to understand the full mechanics of your own operating system, this analysis comes from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It's a truly fascinating framework. You can find out more at their official website, www.maxenergylife.com.
And for our listeners who want to dig into the community discussions, you can search on Facebook for the Chinese terms max energy or met energy. There's a wealth of information there on how these energy dynamics play out in real life.
Next time you're in a meeting and that quiet person in the corner looks like they're doing nothing, just remember, they might be the only one who truly knows what's going on. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.